Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are at the end of the 2025 season. Royals finished 96-66, second in the AL Central, but first in the battle for the wild card. So we had a home wild card series against the Yankees. Unfortunately, we lost that 2 out of 3 series, losing 2 straight. So not the best end to the season. We were without our number 2 and number 3 starters in Kershaw and Bauer, which certainly didn't help. But it was good to finally get these Royals back into the playoffs, where they had not been since 2015. You can see we made slow but steady progress our first 3 seasons with the Royals and took a big jump forward in 2025, which is positive. We do have new ownership who wanted us to reach the playoffs this year, which we did. And now he wants us to reach the World Series over the next couple of years. So there's going to be no rest for the weary with these Royals. The big decision we're going to have to make is how to replenish our starting rotation. We had signed Clayton Kershaw to that 1-year deal. He did great for us, or not great for us, but he had a very good season for us. Only an 11-11 record, but a 3.38 ERA, which was good for a 1.27 ERA plus and an 89 FIP minus across 33 starts. Got everything we had hoped to out of him in the regular season. But in his final start of the regular season, right before the playoffs, he went out and ended up missing our playoff series. It's been about a month since then, so he is now healthy and rested. That doesn't do us any good since we're not playing games right now. Unfortunately, he is looking for about $22 million a year for 4 years to sign an extension with us. So unless we make some real significant changes and trade away some other salaries, which I don't think we're going to do, it's going to be one and done with Clayton Kershaw for us. Looking at the front office, we've got in the neighborhood of $13.8 million for potential extensions to be using on salaries in 2026 when the game year rolls over. But even if our budget increases a bit, and we're hoping maybe we'll move from 170 up to the high 170s, so maybe add another $6 or $8 million to it, so that would push us, up around $20 million, which still probably is not going to be quite enough to get Kershaw signed. So I think that unfortunately we are going to have to move on from Kershaw. So what we've been thinking about is, are there any free agent pitchers that we will be able to put in the top of the rotation along with Bauer and Trevor Rogers to hopefully, I don't know if we're going to replace Kershaw, but hopefully give us, another frontline starter. And the issue when we look at the upcoming free agents, Kershaw, they think he's going to end up signing for around $24 million. Max Scherzer is going to be 41 years old, coming off a torn flexor tendon. I don't think we can give him 17. And then you start getting into Zach Eflin, and is a little more reasonable, but also doesn't have the greatest stuff in the world and has been, a league average-ish type pitcher the last few years. Michael Kopeck, definitely an option. Like his stuff, like his movement, has 4 pitches. Not the best personality in the world, but has been an above-average starter consistently. He is fragile, which we don't love. And he's also looking for over $22 million. Ranger Suarez is a similar situation. So among the real frontline starters, Zack Wheeler is the one that if we're able to do another one-and-done deal similar to what we got from Kershaw, maybe a way to go. They say signability is impossible, but I don't think people expected us to lock up Kershaw for 1 year and $17 million last offseason, and we did. Wheeler was injured, only pitched in 11 games between AAA and the majors this year, but in 6 starts for the Mets was 2-1 with a 2.70 ERA over 40 innings. So he's also fragile at this point. Be 36 next season, but is potentially an option for a 1-year deal. But I don't know that I want to put all of my eggs in that one basket. So have also been thinking about potentially looking to force a trade for somebody. And we've done a search for starters with stamina of at least 50, stuff and movement of at least 55, and control of at least 50. And you can see there's only about a dozen of those guys, maybe a little more in all of baseball right now. One of which we have, Trevor Rogers, which is good. He obviously had a nice year for us last year, and he is heading into his arbitration. Expected to make about $9.9 million this coming year. We may look to sign him to an extension if at all possible. In which case that would potentially make it less likely for us to go after a big free agent, because what we may try to do with Trevor Rogers is front load things a little bit, perhaps, to ease the contract over time. So, some older players, some injured players on the list, not going to go for a 35-year-old Sonny Gray. But did kind of notice our old friend Caleb Lagerwell, who is one of the players that we traded away for Trevor Rogers a couple years ago. And it looks like when we compare him to the other top pitching prospects that we had at the time, that he was the best of the three. Just played his first full season for the Marlins, 32 games pitched, a 10-10 record, 4.02 ERA, which was a slightly above average ERA plus, slightly below average FIP minus. But he's got solid stuff, good movement, and acceptable control, and then 3 really nice pitches. Fly ball pitcher who throws in the mid-90s with a 3/4 arm slot. With the way that our pitching has developed, there is part of me that thinks, how much is it going to cost to potentially right the wrong of having traded? Well, I can't say it's wrong because we got Trevor Rogers for him, who's only a couple of years older. But, Lagerwell was probably the best prospect. That's why the Marlins wanted him. Looking broadly at our organization now, Tyler Bosma was one of the other top prospects at the time. He's now he's 26 years old today. Happy birthday, Tyler. He's got good stuff, but his movement and control are both just kind of adequate, only throwing in the low 90s. He has not developed as well. And then our other option is obviously Spencer Bauer, who will be hopefully back in the rotation, but he's trying to recover from a partially torn labrum. 25 years old. He's already fragile. Really nice stuff, really nice movement. His control's never going to be great, but he does hit 5 pitches, great fastball and slider, really good knuckle curve, and then a curve and a changeup. So I think that Bauer can potentially be a solid major league starter. We're just going to have to kind of baby him a bit to keep him healthy and hope that he hasn't lost too much recovering from that partially torn labrum. But I think it's kind of fair at this point to assume that Lagerwell is the best of those 3 and is also the youngest of those 3. So if there's a way that we can pull off a trade to get back Caleb Lagerwell without, totally pulling apart and ripping apart our minor league system, that may be the way we look to replace Kershaw. Obviously, like I said, if we can sign a 1 year with Zack Wheeler, those of you who have watched a lot of episodes in this series and others with me know I'm always willing to add another starting pitcher because they always seem to be getting hurt. So if there was a way to bring in Wheeler and be able to afford him when we get to the offseason, totally we'll keep that in mind. But right now, like I said, if we can maybe put a trade for Lagerwell together, I'm going to see if that's how we can kick off the start of this offseason. And I pieced together a potential deal to bring Caleb Lagerwell back home. Our assistant GM, JJ Piccolo, thinks it is a bad deal. But J.J. Piccolo is also going to be unemployed in a day or two, as we are not renewing his contract. We had just kept him around because he was on the books when we joined the team, but his contract is finally running out. First, what we'd be getting, we would be getting Lagerwell, who, as I've talked about, I think can be an above-average major league pitcher, 23 years old, normal health. He's not Clayton Kershaw, but 2 or 3 years from now, he's going to be producing a heck of a lot more, I believe, than a late 30s Clayton Kershaw will be. And he's also going to be doing it for the next season or two at much less money. Alberto Osuna, who has a nice personality, but is a 4A kind of player most likely, did play 12 games with Miami at the end of this year, hit .293 with a 111 OPS plus. Really is only a first baseman and a barely adequate first baseman at that. Can't really even put him into the outfield or play him anywhere else. So organizational depth with a nice personality, but certainly not a big-time prospect. And then Jack Kochenovitz, who is, just a minor league arm, almost 25 years old, never, I can't say never been above high A ball because he was in double A briefly last year, but didn't pitch above high A this year and put up a 5.40 ERA in high A ball. So just an arm, so not all that exciting. What we would have to give up is Junior Almante, who is the number 30 prospect in baseball, starting pitcher prospect. He's older than Lagerwell at 25 years old, and we've talked about him a lot in previous episodes. Like him being a ground ball pitcher, love his movement, love his control. His stuff is just not that good. And although he has 5 pitches, his curve, his slider, and his changeup are not exceptional either. The last 2 years in Omaha at AAA, he's put up a 5.03 ERA and a 5.41 ERA. I feel like he should be better than that based on how his pitching ratings look, but just based on his performance, I really question what he's ever going to do at the major league level. I just don't know if he's got enough stuff to be successful. So certainly would be happy to give him up for Lagerwell straight up, but clearly need to do more than that to make the Marlins happy. There was a lot of discussion on the comments about the acquisition of Anthony Rendon, which I totally appreciate and enjoy. We did get the Angels to retain a ton of his contract, so we've got him for $1.9 million next year, which is a bargain price for a player who is a plus offensive player if we look at his batting ratings. The issue is, though, he's 35 years old. In this past season, this plus offensive player, when we look at his ratings, put up an 86 OPS plus for the Angels and an 89 OPS plus for us after a 97 OPS plus in the 2024 season. I just think that, at 35 years old, he's on the downswing. We may wake up one day and either our scout or the OSA scouts may just say, hey, this guy just doesn't have it anymore. He's also fragile. I think he would have been a real interesting bat for us to potentially keep next year on that cheap contract and try at DH. But we do have young players like DeCenzo and Williams that we're trying to get more at-bats for. So I'm okay giving him up also. The one that's tricky is Alex Kenzel, who is the number 36 prospect in baseball and was our number 1 pick in the 2024 draft, 16th overall. He hasn't gotten above rookie ball, did hit, not great this past year, just a 204 batting average, a 52 OPS plus. We'll chalk it up to, bad luck. His BABIP was only 257, which was down over 100 points from his abbreviated 2024 season. Batting profile says he could still be a pretty interesting hitter. The issue is we see with a lot of our players is that he really doesn't have a position. He's 5'10", and his infield range is 20. His error and his arm are 40. He's listed, I think he was drafted as a first baseman, but he's definitely not a first baseman. He is only able to play left field or DH, and he is an adequate at best defensive left fielder. He's also close to 20 years old at this point. And when I look at some of the other top prospects in our system, they're very similar to Kenzel. Alex Vasquez is another great hitting prospect, another player who really doesn't have a position, who's just turned 19, so he's almost a full year younger than Kenzel. He's the number 9 prospect in the game. Those guys are going to be coming up at the same time, and if they're first base, and Vasquez really isn't a first baseman either. He's 6'3", so he's got a better chance at being effective there, but I don't know that I want a 30 range and a 35 error person catching all of the balls and making all the plays that a first baseman kind of needs to make on a regular basis. So he's also a corner outfielder. And then looking down through the system, we also have Juan Palomares, who is again, first baseman, can't even play corner outfield, about to turn 19 years old. Not as much home run power potentially, but potentially really good at contact and avoiding strikeouts, really good personality, and he's durable. I feel like we've got a lot of these guys that can only potentially play one position defensively that are all kind of the same age, which is why I'm thinking maybe we can trade away Kenzel. All he's going to be able to play for us is left field, and I think he can potentially have a really nice bat. You look at that potential home run power and that potential contact, but he's going to be 20 years old in 10 days, hasn't proven anything above rookie ball. And in exchange, we can get a frontline starter to join Bauer and Rogers at the top of our rotation. So have to give up 2 top 36 prospects to do it, as well as Rendon on a bargain contract. So it's definitely not cheap. But I feel like the upgrade from Almante, who's 2 years older than Lagerwell, is an obvious upgrade for the team. So that's a huge plus. Then it's just a matter of, can we afford to get rid of Kenzel and Rendon? Rendon's going to be gone after this next season, would like to have his bat, but kind of feel like he's probably already peaked, and he just might not hit all that much for us. In Kenzel, I feel like we've got other good young hitters who also can only kind of be first basemen or left fielders, maybe right fielders in a best case scenario. I just don't know how many of those guys who are just pure hitters we can have. There's only one DH, and we don't want to have, below average defensive players all over our lineup. So I'm willing to disagree with J.J. Piccolo, and we are going to kick this 2025-2026 offseason off, making this big trade to bring Caleb Lagerwell back to the Kansas City Royals, where hopefully he can head up the rotation with Trevor Rogers, who he was traded for just a couple years ago. We'll see how the team reacts to that. Yeah, of course, they're not happy to let Rendon go, so that's going to knock our fan interest down a few notches, unfortunately. But we're going to have arbitration coming up. We're going to be re-signing, hopefully, a lot of the key players for our team going forward. Getting rid of Rendon actually opens up a bit more money where we can potentially, get a replacement for him, and or perhaps, add a Zack Wheeler into the rotation if we get real ambitious and he's only looking for 1 year. Who knows? Maybe we can figure out a way to bring Kershaw back also if we make a few more trades to take off a bit more money. But I could definitely see this being a controversial move. Would love to hear thoughts on whether we paid too heavy a price to bring back Caleb Lagerwell. But with Rogers, Lagerwell, and Bauer is the top three in our rotation now. Feel that we haven't completely replaced Kershaw, but we've gone a long way towards replacing Kershaw, given that it's only October 24th and the World Series just finished. And we officially got the Great Job Award for the first time with a season score of 802 for the Royals. So certainly some progress made over this past season. And now we will get into finding out what's going on with our contract, hopefully for next season, and what ownership wants to see from us. Review of the season goals. Real happy with our record. Still hoping for more. Wants us to get a championship. Next year wants us to have a winning record. Wants us to have a total balance of $19 million. So he's going to be a little more involved fiscally than perhaps I would have hoped, and wants us to reach the World Series in the next 2 seasons. So the pressure is still high with our new owner. Positively, he did increase the budget to $180 million, so that's an extra $10 million compared to last year to potentially spend. So I like seeing that. Who is retiring from the Royals? Tommy Listella, who ended up down in was in the majors for us, but I think he also was in AAA for us last year. Yeah, I'm only looking at the major league stats right here. Actually, we had to waive and DFA him, that's right, and he wouldn't accept a minor league deal after we had him up very briefly, but I guess he is still linked to us, so congratulations on a fine major league career, Mr. Listella, a 27-year-old who was playing rookie ball for us. He must have had a nice personality. That could be the only reason I can think that I would have had him along. But we've already lost his profile of his personality has also retired. Another player retiring, extended 3-year extension, $900,000 a year. So that does give us a little bit of hopefully insurance to do what we think is right over the next few off seasons. As I mentioned, J.J. Piccolo has left. We did not renew his contract. Top prospects, Alex Vasquez, who we were just talking about, is our lone prospect in the top 10. The off season has begun. Arbitration has begun. And there are some posted players from the Japanese league. Let's just take a quick look. Kenta Fujishima, 2.5-star reliever. Nothing all that. Another 2.5-star reliever, $6.5 million to post. $12 million for a 31-year-old coming off of elbow ligament reconstruction surgery. Not going to go there. Doesn't look like there is anything too interesting in the players that were posted from Japan. So it looks like we're going to have about 13 to 15 million for free agents and extensions. So definitely have the opportunity to make some additional moves, and we also do have the potential to adjust our scouting and development budgets. Actually, just in the interest of giving us a little bit of extra money to play with, we'll take them down modestly to 20 million on scouting, 30 million on development. Let's see what. Ooh, it looks like we're not going to have to spend a lot on the draft next year, so don't want to totally take that down to the actual 6.8, because there always is the opportunity that a player looking for a lot of money slides, and you can kind of sneak him in. But for the time being, we will take that down to 10 million, since we're going to be picking near the end of the first round, and we don't at this point have any compensatory picks. Don't need a ton of money in that draft budget right now. So now we're looking at over $20 million, which means that we can potentially be players in free agency if we want to be, which is a positive development for us. Moving on to the arbitration eligible players, got a lot of big decisions to make. Bubic and Suarez and Wisniewski have all been important members of our rotation over the past several seasons. We've talked about we've got Rogers, Lagerwell, and Bauer at the top of the rotation, so we would be nice to have all three of them back to kind of be our fourth, fifth, and swing starters. Suarez looking for $4.6 million is starting to get pretty expensive. He's coming off a nice season, but he's basically a league average starter. So that's a big decision to make with those three starters, how we kind of fill out the back of our rotation. Do we keep them around or look to move on from any or all of them? Trevor Rogers is going to be looking for close to $10 million. See if he's amenable to... He is amenable to a long-term contract. The issue is he wants over $20 million a year for 6 years after coming in, in his final, I believe, arbitration eligible season this coming off season. Going to have to give that some thought. Aaron Ashby's been really good for us, like that left-handed arm of the bullpen. We'll bring him back. Reese McGuire was kind of a revelation when we had to trade for him when we got rid of Cam Gallagher and brought him on after Melendez went down. He was basically our starter over the second half of the season. Hit pretty close to league average and love that really good defensive catcher ability and his great personality. So would love to have him back behind Melendez. $2.2 million is starting to get expensive for a backup, but like I said, I really love that catcher ability, so there's a lot to think about there. And then MJ Melendez still has 4 months till he's back from that torn ACL that totally fractured his season. Certainly want him back, still an above average-ish kind of bat when you look at his batting ratings, but has been a 126, 120, and 116 OPS plus for us for the last 3 years, so seems to be performing a little better than you would think just looking at his basic batting ratings. OSA does have him modestly higher than our scout does, but the only benefit of him missing all the time this year is that his expected arbitration number has gone down significantly. And when you look at expected salaries for the next few years for Melendez, 4, 5.8, and 7.3, he's expected to make a lot less in arbitration these next 3 years than he was before he suffered that injury. So he may be someone that we try to lock up also. Again, coming off of a major injury, and with the fact that his batting profile, I think has weakened a little bit. Yeah, I mean, he's been 45 contact pretty consistently, so that hasn't changed. But he was, 60 power potential, and now he's down to 55. He's still kind of as good as he was with the eye, so... Actually, he hasn't, he's lost a little bit of power in terms of where we think he can eventually go. And hasn't kind of taken as far a step back as I maybe thought with his ratings. So that makes me feel better that he can probably keep performing with a 110 plus OPS plus for us out of the catcher position, which with a good defensive catcher, great personality would be great. The issue is, we hope that the torn ACL doesn't result in any lingering issues as far as his health. Zach Mckinstry kind of picked him up in a trade, spent most of the year at Omaha. Have to decide whether $1.4 million for a utility infielder is worth that. Vinny Pasquantino is always a decision for us to make this offseason. This is going to be the year where he finally stops making the major league minimum. Got a question whether we want to be paying him $1.1 million a year, last option year available. So Pasquantino we may be moving on from. And then Juanya Pez has been pretty productive for us. You can see 127, 125, and 118 OPS pluses for the last 3 years, averaging about 20 homers a year over those 3 seasons, has a nice offensive profile, a mediocre defensive corner outfielder, which isn't optimal, and that's really all he could play. Could put him at first in a pinch if we need to, but he's not great at first, and he's not great at left, and he's not great at right. And he's starting to get a little bit expensive. So we got some real interesting decisions to make among the arbitration eligible players. Kike Hernandez, we're certainly not going to give him a $18.9 million qualifying offer. Diaz, who we traded for in the right before the trade deadline, is no compensation for him, no compensation for Mr. Kershaw, and no compensation for James McCann. And then we've got a pretty large list of pending minor league free agents that we're going to need to figure out what to do with. So a lot of big decisions for the team as we begin the early stages of this offseason. But we've got Lagerwell on the team, which I'm happy about, and we've got potentially some money to spend. So I think that the goal of not just having a winning record but getting back into the playoffs back-to-back seasons is definitely within reach. And clearly ownership wants us to reach the World Series within the next 2 years too. So that's going to be some big work for us to do. Oh, actually, I'm glad to see that the $19 million profit goal is a 2028 target year. That gives us a little time to maybe really focus on being in the playoffs the next couple years, hoping we can get to the World Series, and then maybe work on maximizing profit, or at least getting profit high enough for our controlling fiscal owner to be content with our performance 3 seasons from now rather than right away. Thinking about Bubic, Suarez, and Wisniewski, they're all 28 or 27 years old. They're all going to be competing for the 4th or 5th starter in our team. Suarez is probably going to be making more than the 2 of the others combined. I think what we got to do is look at what they've actually done over the course of their careers at this point. Bubic just turned 28. He's put up a 93 ERA plus and a 106 FIP minus in parts of 6 seasons with the Royals. Clearly a league average type starter. Suarez, almost 28 years old. Pitched several seasons with the Angels before he came and joined us in 2023, but has been a consistent member of our rotation since then. His ERA pluses with us have been a little bit above average. His FIP minuses have been a little bit above average overall for his career. Again, a very league average pitcher. He has been a little better than average with us, to be fair, putting up a 7.2 WAR and a 3.57 SIERA over his 3 seasons, pitching half of his games in KC. So he is a little better than Bubic. That's fair. And they are both lefties. Hayden Wisniewski, also going to be turning 28 shortly, has been with us for 4 years now. Slightly below average ERA plus and a slightly below average FIP minus, 3.92 SIERA. So I think it's fair to say that Suarez is the best of the 3 in terms of his production. Looking at the ratings, Bubic profiles is a very average starter, which he kind of has been. Wisniewski profiles is a very average-ish starter, which he kind of has been. I do like the fact that he has those 5 pitches, but his stuff is still only a 50, a little better than Bubic. And then Suarez, when you look at the pitching ratings and you even look at the ability on his pitches, he doesn't look as good as those other 2. But when you look at production, he has actually been better than them. So I was hoping that we would see that Bubic, Suarez, and Wisniewski were all exactly the same in terms of their performance. We're kind of in the worst situation possible, where Suarez's performance is a little bit better, which kind of gets to justify maybe paying him a little bit more. But when you look at his ratings, he looks like he almost might be a little bit worse, which makes you think, bring back Wisniewski and Bubic and save a little bit of money. So I was trying to resolve something, and I don't know that I really did. Maybe we'll move on to, one of the easier situations. We definitely want to bring Aaron Ashby back. He has been really good for us in his career with KC, a 152 ERA plus, a 73 FIP minus. He is a very important left-hander out of our bullpen. Look at expected salaries for him at this point in his career. If I can find him. And yeah, he's expected to be $2.6 million this coming year in arbitration and $2.8 million the year after that. So would not mind locking him up a little longer. He's looking for 2.8 for this 1 year. Let's just see if we can maybe get a real good deal. 4 years, $2.5 million years, buy out a couple years of free agency. He's probably not going to like that one bit. Yep, doesn't want a long-term deal. Let's see if we can get him for $23.50 for this coming season. And he finds that acceptable, so hopefully we will get Mr. Ashby signed for only a little bit more than we paid him this past year. Would have liked to lock him up for longer, but still has another arbitration decision a year from now. So hopefully, we'll know more about him, and maybe we can get him locked up long term then. Reese McGuire, definitely somebody we also want to bring back as our backup. He's also, starting to make a little bit more money potentially. $2.2 million and $2.4 million over the next 2 years expected in arbitration. Obviously would like to get him for less than that. Don't know whether he is amenable to a long-term contract. Given, his catcher ability, would feel better, kind of having him for the next couple years as our backup than I think we ended up feeling with Cam Gallagher. $2.1 million a year, 3-year contract, going up just ever so slightly. So it would be $6.6 million over 3 years. Will you be our backup for that amount, Mr. McGuire? Nope, he doesn't want to be tied up that long. So let's see if we can just sign him for $2.05 million for 1 year. Thinks we're getting close. Hopefully 2.1 will be enough to get the deal done, and it appears that it is. So wouldn't have minded Ashby and or McGuire with longer term deals, but still have arbitration with them both coming up a year from now. So if we get them signed for a little less than anticipated, that's still a move in the right direction with players that we do want to have on our roster in the 2026 season. Zach Mckinstry is a tougher decision for us. Kind of an average-ish type bat, which is absolutely fine for a utility infielder. Over the course of his career, 82 OPS plus, 78 WRC plus, so has been a below-average hitter. His profile is average-ish. But, he can play a lot of positions for us, second, third, and short in the infield, where he's certainly not an everyday shortstop, but he can, not embarrass himself out there. And then when you look at left and right field, again, he won't embarrass himself out there. Certainly with that bat, wouldn't want him playing corner outfield on a regular basis, but think that there is potentially some value there. The other potential utility infielder that we've got is our good buddy Moreno, who just doesn't hit. we're ultimately going to need to make a decision one way or the other between Moreno and Mckinstry, because we're probably only going to have room for one of them next year. I love Moreno's glove, and obviously he's got a much better glove than Mckinstry. His bat is just brutal. Looking at his major league history, 76 OPS plus is actually only a little bit worse than Mckinstry, but Mckinstry. If you look at the batting profile, it's clear that expect more offense from Mckinstry on a day-to-day basis. Moreno still has options for next year, so he can end up in AAA. We could always trade Mckinstry away, if I could pronounce it properly. We could always trade him away if we decide he's not going to make the team, and we want to just get the contract off our books. It's not going to be a huge number, so he is looking for $1.4 million. Was just paid $1.2 million. Ooh, he's not interested in discussing this. Okay, well, we'll just make you an offer in arbitration of $1.35 million, and hopefully we'll win arbitration against him. Obviously would have liked to sign him ahead of time, but apparently we've done something to anger Mckinstry. I'm guessing it is the fact that he spent 57 games in Omaha and played only 8 games in Kansas City with only 1 start. And clearly his role on the team makes him angry. So not shocking. We were trying to find a bigger role for you next year, but hey, we'll see you in arbitration, Zach. Our buddy Vinny Pasquantino is always a challenge. Looks like he should be an above-average hitter when you look at his batting ratings. Has nowhere to play defensively. And then over the course of his major league career, he has been almost a perfectly average hitter. 102 OPS plus, 100 WRC plus, put up, a 1.2 WAR over 323 games in his career. He is the definition of average. He's angry with his role on the team. And for the first time, he's potentially not going to be making the major league minimum. So before we traded away Rendon, he was absolutely gone. Now he's only probably gone. When we look at Juanya Pez, the batting profile is really not all that dissimilar. He's got a little more defensive versatility, but he's not a great defensive player. But with a 117 OPS plus and a 119 WRC plus for his career, he's absolutely been a more productive player for us. And he's also, not a full year younger than Vinny, but a little younger than Vinny. So Yepez is starting to get expensive. It's going to be some interesting decisions to make this offseason. Right now we got Lewis in the outfield and center field, and then Peyton Williams probably in left field. And then we've got decisions to make on Pasquantino, Yepez, and Kike Hernandez. So we could potentially rebuild, a significant part of the outfield. The issue when we're looking at pending upcoming free agents, however, is that there's not a lot that's really exciting there. Eloy Jimenez, Kyle Tucker, Jesse Winker, we'd love any of them, but they're making some pretty good money. And then even when you're looking at a Michael Conforto, whose batting profile doesn't look as good as some of the people that we were just talking about, although he has been a pretty productive offensive player during the course of his career, but you're still looking at $14 million for Conforto. Ian Happ, again, he's got better home run power than those guys, but he's been, over the course of his career, actually kind of a below average-ish major league hitter. and he's going to be looking for $10 million. Ramon Laureano, pretty similar batting profile to some of those guys we looked at. He is better defensively, which is important. Would be nice to have a corner outfielder who wasn't a complete butcher out there. But he's been kind of a league average hitter over the course of his career, a little better, and he's looking for $11 million a year. Even Jock Peterson, who we had a couple years ago with a similar batting profile, 109 OPS plus, 108 WRC plus over the course of his career. Even he's looking for $7 million. So I think I've talked myself into bringing back Juanya Pez, certainly, for the $7 million-ish that he is going to be looking for. Do we want to sign Yepez to a longer contract, I guess, is the only question that we do have. Supposed to make $7 million-ish in arbitration this year, $10 million-ish next year, so he's getting expensive. But could we potentially, buy out a year of free agency or two? If you've watched me in the past, I'm probably not going to make a big enough offer to him to get him excited to do that. Yeah, he's looking for 10 this year instead of the 7 that arbitration says he should make, or not says he should make, but that we think we're going to offer him. Would he sign 3 years, average of $8 million a year with us? Nope, no interest. So let's see if we can sign him for $6.7 million for 1 year. He's willing to think about that, so at least we will have him back for a little less than what we thought we might need to offer him in arbitration. The next decision is Mr. Melendez, who, as we talked about, his expected salaries through arbitration have dropped significantly over the course of this season. That he basically missed the entire season. But 4, 5.8, and 7.3 is what's expected the next few years. Obviously, our expectation is that hopefully he comes back completely healthy and he begins to perform more like a player that we expected to be making $10 million-ish a year. Can we get a bargain on him now? Does not look like he wants to give us a bargain. He would sign an extended contract, 8 years, average of $13.5 million a year. He's going to be 27 by the start of the season, so this would take him into his mid-30s. I love Melendez, and he's done a great job for us, but he's a slightly above-average defensive catcher with a good arm, great personality, great influence in the clubhouse, and an average-ish kind of bat that admittedly has performed better than average in the majors, 121 OPS plus for his career. I just don't know that the Royals are a team that can afford to pay a slightly above average offensive catcher, $17 million in his early and mid 30s. That's kind of close to the amount that we were paying Salvador Perez, who was a much bigger bat, and getting rid of him was one of the first decisions we made when we took over this team. So I don't know that we're going to want to lock up Melendez for that long and for that much money, but I'll see if I can work something out with him. We are probably going to anger our franchise catcher. He is looking for 8 years, over $108 million. We are willing to offer him 5 years, $37 million. It's not going to work. And we're probably just going to end up signing him to a 1-year deal, but that takes him through his age 31 season. We'll take out the team option in the final year, give him a little bit more security. So now it is a pure 5-year, $37 million deal, but we're only offering him 7.4 a year. He's looking for 13.6. We're just going to make him angry. We're trying to take advantage of him because he's coming off an injury, but we're just playing a game. Let's see what happens. Yeah, not really the salary that he was expecting, but he is willing to go to 5 years if we meet him somewhere in the middle. He's already come down to only about $13 million, so maybe we can structure something here. We've come up a bit to an average of, excuse me, 8.6 million a year over 5 years, with 10 and 12 in the last 2 seasons. Hard to imagine he's going to come down. He is coming down little by little. We are making progress. I just don't know that we want to lock him up right now until we know more about what happened with that injury. At least not at the numbers he's looking for. Let's see if we can get him locked up for this coming year at 3.7 million. Not even close to what he was hoping to see. How about 3.9 million MJ? All right, so he'll accept that. We gave it a shot, a little bit less than what we were expecting to offer him for the 1 year. It could end up costing us for the long term. We may have been able to get him locked up for 11-ish million a year for the next 5 years. But I'd rather see what he looks like coming off of this torn ACL. I think he should be fine, but you just never know. I'm going to just take a look and see if we can get anything for Vinny Pasquantino in trade. Doubtful. Doubtful that it would be anything too exciting, I guess. Ruben Galindo, a 3.5-star reliever, out for 2 to 3 months with shoulder inflammation, but he's got 3 option years left. Right-handed reliever, be 25 next year. Finally got some major league action with the White Sox this past season and got absolutely crushed. 6.95 ERA, 1.72 whip. So it was not particularly impressive, and now he's banged up. But obviously a lot of random relievers being offered for Mr. Pasquantino. Brendan Rogers making big money. I think we'd feel a lot better with Mckinstry as our utility infielder for what we're going to be paying him. IKF, former Yankee. Oof. Not a great glove, and it's good at making contact and not striking out, but not a ton of power there for the 30-year-old. Ryan Jeffers, 28-year-old catcher, respectable defensively, not great, but respectable. Below average bat, which certainly shows up in his statistics so far. Only 1 option year left. If he had a few options, can never feel too bad about adding some depth at catcher. Jordan Hicks from the Yankees is making some money. If we could get them to retain his contract, or a big chunk of his contract for next year, he would not be a bad right-handed bullpen arm. I don't think we would be using him as a starter like the Yankees had been. But that's interesting. Brad Keller, our former buddy, signed that huge contract with the Mets, making massive money the next few years. Was slightly below, slightly above average-ish maybe this year. Not going to be paying him $20 million a year, I'll tell you that. If the Mets want to keep his contract, they can. But we can actually get something for Vinny. So if we can find a player who's got a few option years left. I mean, even here, Alex Kirilloff. He's a little better defensively than Vinny is. Probably not quite as good of a batting profile as Vinny, but when you look at what he's done at the major league level, he's been pretty close to league average, just like Vinny. I'm guessing Kirilloff probably doesn't have a lot of options. Yeah, only 1 option year left, so I guess that's better than the no options that Vinny's going to have left, but still not all that exciting. Wow. How the mighty have fallen. Actually, he still was pretty productive last year. Almost 30 home runs, 289 batting average, 147 OPS plus. Ooh, he's going to be making a lot of money with the Blue Jays for Devers. Probably not the right move for us. Alex Manoah from the Blue Jays, a competent-ish major league starter. 2 option years left. Only expected to make $1.8 million. What's he done in the actual majors? 96 ERA plus, 109 FIP minus, a bit below average starter, but not a train wreck. Verdugo, who's with the Rangers now. That could be a corner outfielder for us. Not the greatest personality in the world, making a ton of money. Well, not a ton of money, but a lot of money for what he's been, which is a bit above average. I mean, if we could get Verdugo for Vinny and they were able to retain the vast majority of his salary, I would do that. But I can't imagine Texas is going to want to be retaining 90% of his salary. Yeah, stop wasting my time. Yeah, we don't want to be spending $7 or $8 million a year on Verdugo, even if it does let us get rid of Vinny Pasquantino. So I think there's stuff to think about here, but nothing that blows me away right now, that's for sure. I think there might be something to do with Vinny, but I'm going to try to see if there might be a package deal. I mentioned that I'm unsure of whether I want to be paying Jose Suarez $4.5 million-ish next year. Could we get a prospect package of some sort for Vinny Pasquantino and Jose Suarez? Well, we can get packages. Looks like they're packages of garbage, but they are prospect packages technically. I mean, I guess it's not shocking that a couple of players who are questionable whether a team wants to pay them in arbitration, just not going to get much. So give it a try. Oh, Vinny. Vinny. Can't you see? Sometimes having you in my lineup just terrifies me. Looking at the Padres, I'm a little intrigued by Brooks Lee. He's a 24-year-old shortstop, really utility infielder profile. Not going to hit for much power, but could hit acceptably for average. Only hit .243 this year and 37 at-bats in his first major league action. But he does still have 2 option years left, unlike Vinny. And given that it doesn't seem like Mr. Mckinstry really wants to play on our team, I think that Brooks Lee would be a acceptable version of our utility infielder for us. Maybe we keep Mckinstry or maybe we move on. They've also got Alexander Vargas, who's got probably even a slightly better glove. Doesn't look like he's got quite as good a bat. Good speed, good base running. Vargas still has 1 option year left. If we were able to pick up both of those guys for Vinny, that would certainly let us move on from McKinstry. I can't imagine they're going to give them both to us, but let's see. Yeah, they don't want to give us Vargas with Brooks Lee unless we add in a pretty good player, so we definitely don't want to do that. But maybe we can get a little cash out of the Padres with Brooks Lee. I'm not willing to do $1 million. Can we get 800? Oh, come on. We're the Royals. Throw us a freaking bone here. We'll give us 600,000. I think Vinny's time with us is over. Brooks Lee could become our utility infielder ahead of McKinstry at a major league minimum salary. Even if we keep McKinstry, we've got 2 more option years left with Brooks Lee. So I think Vinny, thank you for your service with the Royals, but you've kind of always been on the roster bubble pretty much the whole time. Don't love your glove. You've been an acceptable bat, but hopefully you can get a fresh start with the Padres. And with Brooks Lee on board, the question is, do we try to trade away Mr. Cranky Pants, Mckinstry? Also should trade away Mckinstry because I constantly pronounce his name wrong. But if you don't want $1.35 million to be our utility infielder, well, we just brought in a guy that's younger than you, probably a little better defensively, even though he doesn't have as good a bat. So, anyone willing to give us anything for Zack? Not so much, but there's a few options out there. Not all of them are 30-year-old middle relievers, although it looks like a good chunk of them are. Ooh, the Mets really want to get out of that Brad Keller contract. Wow. Hey, congratulations for him for getting the bag, but I don't want him at that kind of money either. Evan White's got a horrible contract. A lot of expensive guys here. Steven Nogasek from the Brewers. Reliever. Does have 2 option years left. Making the major league minimum. Decent stuff. Not great movement or control. Jose Barrero of the Reds is an option. Similar bat to McKinstry. Maybe a little better defensively. The problem is he's actually making some real money. McKinstry looks like a bargain to him, even though he's only 27 years old. I can't imagine the Reds want to keep that contract. Obviously, they want to get rid of that contract, but I can't imagine that they'll retain a huge amount of it. Yeah, of course it's a deal right now. How about when I ask you to retain 90% of it? Yeah, not so good, is it? No, there's no way we can be paying him $3.5, $4, $5 million a year for a utility infielder. We'll bring Zack back if that is the best option that we've got out there. So I don't really love the options, sadly, for Zack McKinstry. A lot of overpriced players. Wyatt Mills. The definition of a meh reliever in his last option year, so he's not going to work out too well for us. All right, we'll let McKinstry go to arbitration. Can't get anything for him in trade. And then we'll let the best man win as far as our utility infielder. Brooks Lee versus Zack McKinstry. I think we're definitely going to make an offer to Wisniewski since he's making the least money out of any of the starting pitchers. The starting pitchers headed into arbitration, more specifically. He's only supposed to make $1.1 million a year through arbitration for the next few seasons. Do we want him to kind of be our number 5 starter and or just kind of a swing man who can help us out in the bullpen or the rotation going forward? He's a ground baller, decent velocity, as we talked about, has been kind of a league average type pitcher. I would be willing to offer him, looks like he's looking for some pretty decent money. I don't know if I'm going to offer him enough to convince him to buy out a year of free agency, but average of $1.1 million a year for the next 4 years. Nope, not interested. So let's see if he will potentially go for $1.05 million for the 1 year, though. So that's fine. I think we'll probably also offer Bubic and Suarez. Let's see what they theoretically have coming their way. Suarez expected to make 2.1 or 4. Sorry, it's his last year. 4 points. Okay, it's the last year for both of them. So we either make them an arbitration offer just for this next season, or we get them signed for a few years. Not particularly bulled up to sign either of them for the real long term. Bubic has been solid for us. If he was willing to take $2.2 million a year for 3 years, we'd extend him. I doubt that he will. Nope, not interested in that. So let's see if we can give him $2.2 million for his final year. He will potentially accept that. Brings us back to Mr. Suarez, the most expensive outside of Trevor Rogers, obviously. $4.6 million for him is getting to be a lot. He wants 5.1. We're looking like we're going to have over $20 million. Do I really think that I might be able to potentially sign a Zack Wheeler? The OOTP people say it will be impossible for us to sign him. Yeah, he would obviously be a great arm. I don't know what to think of Suarez. I'm going to offer him, less than he's looking for in arbitration. Only a 1-year deal. Don't want to lock him up for the long term. I do feel that if we decide to move on, we can probably get out of about whatever we're paying. We can get him off the books without taking a big hit. See if he'll sign for 4.25. Probably going to be a little too low. No, he actually might think about it. All right. So now we have meanderingly done the easy stuff as far as our arbitration eligible players, although we are actually going to knock Mckinstry down to 1.3 million just because he has made a very powerful enemy in me. The guy had literally 4 at-bats at the major league level this year. If there's ever a time when a $100,000 raise, is probably not even merited, but he's going to put in a bigger number than that. But I just think we have a decent chance of winning at 1.3 million, given that he spent most of the year at AAA. We'll see what happens with that. So now our friend Mr. Trevor Rogers. I believe this is his last year of arbitration. Yep, looking or expected to get about 9.9 million, which we would happily pay him for next year. The issue, as we talked about earlier in the episode, is he is willing to sign a long contract with us, but can we possibly afford to be paying him 20-something million a year? I don't think the Kansas City Royals can pay him 24 million a year. And that hurts me to say because he is a cornerstone of our rotation. He's our definite number 1 starter. But I don't see him being brilliant pitcher. I mean, for his career, he's got a 108 ERA plus and 83 FIP minus. Very good, above average. And he's been better with us with a 112 ERA plus and an 82 FIP minus. Again, an above average starter with normal injury proneness, who's extremely popular locally. Convincing myself that we can pay him that much money, but I just don't know that we can. Do we just make a lower offer to him and see if maybe we can sign him for a few of those free agency years, not at the type of dollars he's looking for? And I guess the other option is we do now have the money to front load a contract to him, which would make him a bit more reasonable for the out years in the contract. Obviously, that would take us out of the market to bring on a Wheeler or a Kershaw or one of the top line pitchers, but if we really think that Rogers, Logwell, and Bauer are our top three, and we want to lock up Rogers, do we need a fourth really great, well, not really great, a fourth above average pitcher, or are we okay with those three, and then Wisniewski, Suarez, Bubic, and maybe the youngster Vanasco filling out our fourth and fifth spots and stepping in when we suffer the inevitable injuries. Maybe that money is better put into bringing on a big-time corner outfielder. Again, there's not a lot of great options in free agency, as we saw earlier, and they're relatively expensive. But doesn't mean that we can't take on some salary in a trade. So, Mr. Rogers, we would like you to stay in our neighborhood. But I don't know if we want to stay in. I don't know if we want you to stay in our neighborhood for another 6 years at $24 million a year. Let's see if we can offer him a 5-year deal. $15 million this coming year. Ooh, he did structure it with team options those last 2 years, which were, years 6 and 7 in the contract he was looking for, but are years 4 and 5 in this contract. $15 million a year. We're overpaying a bit compared to, overpaying by over $5 million compared to where we can probably sign him for a 1-year deal. But then we're getting him for 4 more years at $15 million, which for a well above average starter on the open market is absolutely acceptable. I don't like those $7 million buyouts, though. I'll tell you that. He's probably not going to like the $1.5 million buyouts that we're putting in front of him. Ooh, and he's looking for a big bonus for a Cy Young Award, but hey, you and the Cy Young Award will happily pay that. So we are essentially offering him a 5-year, $75 million contract with a lot of incentives that could make it worth more, but an average annual value of $15 million. So he's making a lot more money this coming year, but then we're getting him at a discount in the out years. I'm going to see if I don't want to mess around with Rogers too much. If we can get him signed to this contract, that's a real good contract for us. And he's not interested in that. He has come down a little bit in terms of what he's looking to, less than $21 million a year. He does want the 7 years. Let's see if maybe we can meet in the middle with 6 years. I don't know how much more I want to go than $15 million a year. Make the buyouts a little more attractive to him potentially. Increase the bonus for the Cy Young Award to $1.5 million. Again, you win a Cy Young Award, we will happily pay you. So obviously we're $15 million average a year, which we are going to have to bump up. Let's see if we front load it. $21 million this coming season, which is going to spend a lot of the money that we think we're going to potentially have, but then we get him at $15 million a year for 5 years after that. So we've increased the annual value to $16 million a year from $15 million, giving him the 6th year, getting closer to the 7 that he's looking for. I don't think this is going to be enough to get it done, and it's not. I want to get him locked up now that we're having these conversations. With team options the last 2 years, we probably can go to the 7 years that he's looking for. Again, you win a Cy Young Award, I'll pay you pretty much any bonus you want. $16 million a year to start across everything. And then I don't love front loading it. We're going to have to do more than $16 million. I said more, not less. $17 million a year for 7 years. Obviously, that averages $17 million a year. We're going up $1 million a time. Let's see what he thinks. He's still talking to us. He's getting less interested now. Now he wants a shorter contract, 3-year with an average of $18 million. We actually may be able to structure something along that line. Do I want to give him $18 million a year for 3 years? Yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point now where I would prefer to have him a little longer. I may have goofed around with him a little bit too much on this because we are about to upset our ace starter, which is not optimal. So $18 million a year average, $18 million a year for 5 years. Only one team option. Trevor thinks it's a fair offer, so we may have him locked up. It's going to be an expensive contract for us, but we can get out after 4 years with the team option if we need to. And given that he is a well above average pitcher, he was probably going to be making in the 20s in those out years when he became a free agent. We'll see what happens. Definitely going to be a big annual dollar amount for us to be paying here at the Royals, and it's going to use up some of the potential money for free agents that we had because we're going to be paying him about $18 million instead of the $10-ish million that he was expected to get in arbitration. But hopefully with some of the guys that we've brought in a little lower, that'll help us on the margins. But going to be interesting to see what happens with that contract. And we've started to hear back. Andy Ashby, Jose Suarez, Hayden Wisniewski all signed, and Trevor Rogers goes for the 5-year, $90 million extension. So we overpaid by about $8 million for this upcoming final season of arbitration, but then getting 4 years at $18 million per for him on the open market was definitely less than I think he would have made in free agency. Fans are pleased we brought him on board. Got Reese McGuire signed, Juanya Pez signed, Chris Bubic signed, MJ Melendez signed, which fans are excited about. That means that Mckinstry is the only arbitration-eligible player we haven't figured out, or as in the case of Vinny Pasquantino, traded away. You can see that we did dig into our money for free agents a bit with the fact that we're paying Rogers a lot more this upcoming season than we had previously anticipated. But we now have Bobby Witt Jr. and Trevor Rogers, our number one starter and our best offensive player, locked up for the next 5 years since we have an option on Rogers. So we've got the cornerstones of our franchise locked up for $31 million total for each of the next 5 years. So I think those, after we get through Rogers' last arbitration year here, those are both under market contracts for us. Not by a huge amount, but by enough that hopefully it allows us to build around them, remain competitive, and if we needed to trade one of them away, the salary is not so crippling that it would cost us a ton to get rid of those contracts. So feeling pretty good about the start of this offseason. We've got Rogers locked up for the next 5 years, and we've also brought in the prodigal son, Caleb Lagerwell, back. Had to give up a lot to bring him on board, but he is a 23-year-old good young starter. I think with him and Bauer, we are going to have a pretty solid top three of our rotation with all guys who are in their 20s and with the exception of Bauer, relatively healthy. We're going to have to put a pitch limit on Bauer next season to try to nurse his fragile arm through the season. But I think we're off to a decent start as far as the 2025 to 2026 offseason. We will be back in our next episode to dig into free agency and maybe even make some additional trades to really start reshaping this roster in preparation for hopefully another run at the playoffs in 2026. Until then, thank you so much for watching and hope you have a great day.